I want to give a little demo about the new features in Replicate that was added in 373, 373. And that is this new field called policy that is on the upstream pulp model. And what the policy does is it allows you to change the behavior of how the replicate operates. So by default, and what it was currently before, is that replicate would make it so that the replicate pulp would be an exact mirror of the upstream pulp. And so any changes that occurred on the upstream pulp would be reflected on the downstream pulp. So if you added a new repository, that would show up in the replicate. If you deleted a repository, then that deletion would also show up. And so that policy is still the default, and it's now under this name policy all. And so basically, it denotes that replicate will manage all of the objects in that pulp object based off what's available in the upstream. And so here I have a little diagram giving an example where we have the upstream pulp A, and it has 3 repositories with 3 backend distributions. And so when you go to do a replication, pulp B finds these 3 distributions. And so it's going to create 3 repositories in itself. And part of the new behavior is that we also apply labels when we're doing the replicate. And so now that pulp knows where these objects are being created from. And so when it creates these new objects, you get the 2 labels, one the label that was available on the upstream, but then also this new label, upstream pulp. And then the actual value will be the UUID of the upstream pulp object on pulp B. And so this is normal behavior, right? So if I deleted, say I deleted distro 2, then distro 2 on the pulp B on the next replicate would also be deleted. There is also a new none policy, which, like the name implies, means that replicate will not touch any of the objects, will not delete any of the objects. So that should be more clear. Actually, it's not called none. It's called no delete. My bad. Yes. So that's the second option, no delete. And so in this scenario, if I deleted distro 2 from pulp A, then distro 2 would still remain in pulp B. And so this you can kind of think of as like an additive sync. And so we're always just keeping the old stuff around. It only gets updated if the upstream gets updated. And then the third policy is labeled. And so in this label example, what basically it allows you to do is only manage the objects that share the same label as the upstream. And so in this example, we have a pulp B, and it's already been pre-populated with a test repository. And then we replicate from A. And when we replicate from A, we'll get these 3 distributions and repositories, but we'll still keep the repository tests around, because when we go to delete the objects, we only delete the objects that have this upstream pulp A label. And so if we were to do another replication and say we deleted distro 2, then only distro 2 would get deleted because it has the upstream pulp A. And so that's what this labeled feature does. Any questions about that? Now, some interesting little tidbits is that say we were to have a pulp C that we another pulp, and it has a similar repo one and distro one. Because replication is done by the name of the object, whoever replicated last will become the final downstream object. And so, say you replicate from A and then you replicate from C, this one would end up becoming C. And I probably wouldn't have this labeled. And so name collisions are something to be wary of. If you are replicating from multiple upstreams into one downstream, we'll just take whatever the last object synced was. That will become the new object on the downstream.